The Detroit Lions have won another playoff game, and they're off to the NFC Championship game for just the second time in franchise history. Welcome on into the Blue Ski Mask Show. We're Brock and Kurt here, breaking down the Lions. And Kurt, when we started this show, I think it was back in October, I'll be honest, I personally did not see us being in late January still talking about the Detroit Lions, but here we are.
We are, and I know it's crazy. We just wanted that one playoff win, and here we are with two, with the chance to get even more. One of the last four teams left to compete for a Super Bowl. It feels good. Feels real good.
It really does. I'm not a huge Lions fan or anything like that. I know a lot of people here that go to OU are, but you can't help but smile because this team's been through just so much heartbreak. Been through so much, and here they are. They beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 31-23 to advance to the NFC Championship game, where they will face the San Francisco 49ers. How are we feeling about it, Kurt?
Not a fan of that matchup, if we're being honest. But if we were going to go this deep in the playoffs, I feel like it was only a matter of time till we ran into the 49ers, and I think that we should be grateful that we didn't run into them earlier, because who knows if we even make it to the NFC Championship. So
yeah, sooner or later, if you're going to keep winning playoff games, you're going to have to face the better teams. And obviously, if the Lions do beat the Niners in advance, it's going to be another tough matchup in the Super Bowl with either the Chiefs, who I guess the Lions did beat in Week 1, but they are looking really good, and then the Baltimore Ravens would be the other potential matchup, and that's a team that beat you by 32 points earlier in the season. So the games get harder. This is what makes the playoffs so great. The best teams advance, and then it makes for some great matchups. But Jared Goff was just incredible once again. He kind of later in the regular season, he was criticized a lot for turning the ball over, but he's done a very, very good job of protecting the ball, making the right decision, not trying to make the flashy play, but just controlling the offense. He was 30 of 43 for 287 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's 6.7 yards per pass and a quarterback rating of 103.5. Like I said, another game with no turnovers. So very impressed out of Jared Goff. Now, how do you think his experience from being with the Rams for those years after he was drafted first overall in 2016, how do you think that's going to help him in this game against the 49ers?
We'll see. I'm still a little scared with Goff because it feels like he's either really hot or really cold, to me at least. And if there was a game where he goes really cold, it would happen against the 49ers, because this is going to be the toughest defense we've seen, at least Goff has seen probably so far in these playoffs. Not that the Bucs defense is a pushover defense, but the 49ers are a lot more well-rounded, I'd say, defensively. So hopefully that experience kicks in. I think Goff he might be the oldest QB left in the playoffs at this point, if I'm thinking correctly, because you have Lamar, you have Patty, and you have system QB.
System QB.
So Goff might have the most NFL experience. Not the most playoff experience, but I guess that's something we have under our belt for sure.
And I think it's important to note, too, that at least he has some. He's obviously not as experienced in the playoffs as a guy like Patrick Mahomes, but he's been to a Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. And that's something that Brock Purdy, and you can't say that about Brock Purdy or Lamar Jackson. So it's important to remember he's been to a Super Bowl. He's been in this game before. And I think that's going to help tremendously. And Brock Purdy's only 2 years out of college. He was the last pick in the NFL draft. And I totally agree with your statement on him. Listen, I don't want to get into a rabbit hole here, because this is a Lions focused show, but Brock Purdy is just the most, I don't even know if I can say average, because I don't even think he's really if he was on a team other than the 49ers, he would not be average. He would not be an average NFL quarterback. He's a product of the great system that they run there in San Francisco. And that's all I'm going to say. But yeah, I mean, Jared Goff, lots of experience. I think that will bode well for Detroit in this matchup. And, you know, the two running backs too, Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, both solid once again. Gibbs had that one rushing touchdown where it didn't necessarily seal the deal, but it was kind of like, okay, you know, Detroit's going to likely win this game, and they did. He had 9 carries for 74 yards and a touchdown. He also caught 4 passes for 40 yards. And David Montgomery ran for 33 yards on 10 carries. So lots of good stuff. Like kind of like we talked about last week. Not necessarily flashy other than the Gibbs touchdown run, but doing enough to keep defenses honest as it relates to the run game to open up the pass game for Goff.
Right, and they did this against a pretty run-heavy defense. When I think of like defenses around the NFL, I think the Bucs are almost very similar to the Lions, where they're just built for the run. Do they defend the pass well? Not really, but yeah, still solid performances from 2 guys against a defense that's not a joke when it comes to the running game.
And I think you're going to see a lot of similarities between the Buccaneers and the 49ers this weekend, where a really good defense, but they should be able to run it a little bit. The 49ers have 2 really great edge players in Nick Bosa and Chase Young. But I don't hear a whole lot about the interior of their defensive line. I'm sure it's not bad, but that's going to be one of the keys to the game, is if Detroit can develop a run game that can help Jared Goff get going and open up those passing lanes. As it relates to receiving, Amon-Ra St. Brown was unbelievable. The dude is always open. I can't believe it. He just finds a way to get open. And Sam Laporta, too, he was incredible. He's still not even healthy.
No, not 100%. Definitely a lot more healthy than our matchup against the Rams, but he's definitely there. He's definitely a presence. So that's what we want to see from Sam Laporta.
Yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown caught 8 passes for 77 yards and a touchdown, and Laporta was right there with him for 9 catches and 65 yards. So really good stuff out of them. Josh Reynolds, who had a really big game against the Rams 2 Sundays ago, was solid as well. Craig Reynolds scored a touchdown there. That was weird. I'm not...
I didn't know there was a dude named Craig Reynolds on our team until he scored.
Yeah.
You can call me a casual, but yeah. Weird to see not Gibbs or Montgomery in the backfield, especially at the 1 yard line.
Yep. And 4th down too. It was 4th and 1 if I remember right. And
yeah,
I'm sitting there watching. I'm like, who is that in the backfield? Because it wasn't Gibbs and it wasn't Montgomery. And then, Craig Reynolds. So, you know, it was impressive. Listen, this Lions offense can be really good when the run game is clicking. Amon-Ra St. Brown gets going. Sam Laporta gets going. But the defense, too. I think it gets a lot of criticism. Sometimes Aaron Glenn sometimes gets a little hated on too much. But when the defense needs to, it steps up big time. We saw it against the Rams. 3 red zone possessions, 3 field goals, if I remember right. And then this week against the Buccaneers, Derek Barnes with the interception late in the game. The defense was great. I mean, 4 sacks of Baker Mayfield. Aiden Hutchinson was there. Brian Branch. Ife Melifonwu.
2 guys from the secondary.
Yeah.
Just that. They were just uncovered any time they got, deep into the line, and they made some huge plays for us. And CJ Gardner-Johnson, who we will talk about a little more later, also had his interception. The inspiration for, I guess, the title of our show. But what scares me the most with this team heading into San Fran is it feels like we get torched by a wide receiver like any given week. Like Mike Evans caught 8 passes for 147 yards. Puka had over 140 yards. We don't know if Deebo Samuel's going to be healthy. I hear it's a 50-50 right now with him. And I can't imagine Brandon Ayuk having a 140-yard game, but it's still possible. So that's something we're going to have to keep our eyes on. And Rachaad White was still also solid. He had 9 carries for 55 yards, which is well over what you expect from a running back. And he also caught 4 passes for 36 yards and a touchdown I think that was that screen in the red zone went to him, and he was just touchless, made into the end zone. But CJ Gardner-Johnson, like we said, he talked the talk and he walked the walk. I don't know exactly when he said this about the Bucs wide receiver core. I think it was earlier in the season. But he said, if you give that Tampa group a good quarterback, that's a great group. And Baker Mayfield did not take too kindly to that. So,
as he shouldn't, right? I mean, that's kind of an unnecessary comment there before the game, and luckily for Gardner-Johnson, it didn't backfire. I thought it was funny on his interception on Tampa Bay's second drive of the game, or first or second drive of the game. He catches it, runs it back for a little bit, and then it just so happened that as he ran out of bounds, Baker Mayfield was running back to the sideline, and they kind of like crossed paths, and Gardner-Johnson just kind of flipped him the ball. I thought that was pretty funny. Kind of ironic given the comments that he made about Baker Mayfield. But, yeah, CJ Gardner-Johnson's a kind of guy that you either love him. You love him if he's on your team, but you might hate him if he's not. And he was, even after the game, saying, quote, "I told you all who Baker was." So, lots of talk from CJ Gardner-Johnson, but he backed it up with an interception. What concerned me, I don't want to talk too much about, the talk, and I'd rather focus a little bit more on the game. But Baker Mayfield, it's not like he didn't have a bad game. It's not like he had a bad game.
No.
He completed 26 of 41 passes for 349 yards and 3 touchdowns. He did have the 2 interceptions, but for the most part, he got whatever he wanted.
He did, but I will say this. If you break it down how Tampa's offense worked, I mean, Rachaad White didn't even have 10 carries. Mayfield throws over 48 attempts. That's an 80-20 split between pass plays and run plays, which I guess makes sense looking at how our defense has been all year. But if 80% of your offensive production is coming through the air, I hope that you throw for 300 yards respectfully, or it's not going to look too good. But nonetheless, you can't discredit Mayfield. He had a pretty solid game.
That is a good point. And, I don't know. In my opinion, Brock Purdy is not on the level of Baker Mayfield or Matthew Stafford, but you got to be a little bit concerned because this is now 2 weeks in a row where the opposing quarterback, I think Stafford threw for over 300. I think he threw for maybe even over 400.
Yeah, and he threw for a lot, definitely.
Because Nakua had at least 140, 150 of them. So it's 2 weeks in a row now where the Lions defense has really not been great, especially the secondary. Cam Sutton has been burned a number of times the last couple weeks. So there's a little bit to be worried about there. Let's move into a little bit of off-the-field news. I guess first I'll start with something on the field. Brock Wright, in case you missed the game, got injured. It's looking like he probably won't be back this season. So the Lions went out and they signed Zach Ertz on Monday. And Ertz is a guy who is probably over the hill in terms of his prime. He's not what he used to be. But, Kurt, what are your thoughts on this signing for the Lions, given the Brock Wright news?
Pretty good insurance policy, I'd say. I think Zach Ertz was on the Cardinals before he signed with us. And when Kyler Murray is your QB, I feel like your expectations are not met. So it's definitely solid to have Zach Ertz on this team. I'm kind of curious to see if he gets any targets, how we use him in the offense. Obviously he's not going to be a big part of it, but I like the signing. Because we can't just have Laporta, especially since he's coming back from his injury still slightly. You got to have a backup. What better than Zach Ertz? I mean, don't get any better than that.
Yeah, he's a guy who used to be really good with the Eagles. Him and Carson Wentz had pretty good connections. So interested to see what kind of a role he'll have on Sunday as the Lions take on the 49ers like we've talked about. Looking in around the rest of the NFL in the playoffs, the number 1 seed in the AFC, the Baltimore Ravens, took care of the Houston Texans 34-10 at home. That ended C.J. Stroud's very, very impressive rookie season. You can't criticize him too much, though, because the Ravens are just a juggernaut right now, and they're probably the favorites to win the Super Bowl. It was tied 10-10 at halftime.
It was.
And then the Ravens kind of asserted their dominance over the Texans and handled them pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, like I said last week, I love watching the Texans. I love watching C.J. Stroud, but they just could not get anything going on offense all game. I mean, their one touchdown was a punt return touchdown, which, rarely ever happens in the league, especially against the Ravens. But this Ravens team holding them to just a field goal, pretty terrifying. Not that the Texans ever really had a chance to win this game, in my opinion, but yeah, the Ravens are deadly for sure.
They're my pick to win the Super Bowl. And listen, that could be chalk. I don't care. I think they're the best team in the NFL. And I've joked with some friends and family. I think it's the year of Harbaugh. I think Jim Harbaugh, who won the national championship with Michigan, is going to see his brother win the Super Bowl with the Baltimore Ravens. I think that would be pretty cool. They're my pick to win it all. But the team that I think has the best shot at knocking off the Ravens are the 49ers, who we've talked a little bit about already. They barely survived Green Bay at home, 24-21. Kurt, that was a fantastic game, but that must have been one that 49ers fans were very concerned about for a while.
Yeah, and I mean, this just shows this Green Bay resurgence is real, and it's already happening. And as a division opponent, I'm terrified of the Packers at this rate. I know I said I was scared the week before, but I am terrified now because it felt like they were in the game. They had a shot the entire time. There wasn't ever a point where San Fran, were distinguishable winners in that game till the very end when they got the interception on Jordan Love. But man, what a game. Definitely one of the most exciting games probably this year, at least that I've seen.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And I know a lot of Lions fans were probably rightly rooting for Green Bay in that game. As much as it probably pained a lot of Lions fans to be doing, they would have given Detroit a home game hosting the NFC Championship, which would have been pretty crazy. But obviously the 49ers won. The Lions will be going on the road. I will say, I think this situation worked out a little bit better for the Lions just because if you lose to the 49ers, there's no one's gonna bat an eye, right?
Yeah.
It's not like anyone's going to be like, oh, that's a game you should have won. How could you possibly lose? This is already a successful season. If you lose to a team that's clearly been one of the better three teams in the NFL all year, if you lose to them in the NFC Championship game on the road, it's acceptable. If the Packers won, which I think, I personally am kind of glad they didn't, because if you host the Packers in the NFC Championship game, and this team that has just haunted you for 15 years, the year after they lose their star quarterback, they bring in some young guy. If you lose that game at home to the Packers and first-year starting quarterback Jordan Love, I get it. You made it to the NFC Championship game, but that one's a little tougher to swallow.
Definitely. And I mean, we lost to the Packers at home on Thanksgiving, so it's not like we had the season sweep on them.
Right.
So it was a very possible loss that could have happened if we were playing the Packers at home this week. But luckily, we don't have to think about that. That's just water under the bridge for now. But the Chiefs and Bills game, a game that everyone loves, everyone looks forward to every year, is over, unfortunately. The Chiefs did win to move on to the AFC Championship. I will apologize now publicly for calling the Chiefs frauds last week, because frauds don't beat the Bills on the road. So,
yep. I totally agree, and I think I said the same thing about the Chiefs, that they were frauds. I can't imagine how painful this must be for Bills fans. This is a team, I think I was watching the broadcast. I think they mentioned this is the 7th time in 4 years that the Bills and Chiefs have faced off. That's almost 2 a season. That's just about as frequent as a regular divisional opponent. And I think it was like the third time in the playoffs, 3rd or 4th time in the playoffs in the last 4 or 5 seasons, something like that. For 2 teams to match up that frequently at the end of the year, it's impressive. But at the same time, if you're the Bills, you have to win one. You can't just keep being terrorized by Patrick Mahomes. This was the year. Every single year before this, they had played at Arrowhead. And Patrick Mahomes won. This was the year it was supposed to be different because they were at home in Buffalo. And Josh Allen couldn't get it done.
No, and I mean, I don't put this on Josh Allen. Josh Allen had such a good game.
He did. He
really did. But then again, if the game comes down to a field goal, I know the saying is then you screwed up over an hour ago. So, I don't know. Just watching the Chiefs and Bills, I kind of put down the analyzing glasses just so I can be like, oh my gosh, Chiefs versus Bills. Such a fun game. But man, it didn't fail to deliver a good game. You can say that. But the Chiefs move on. Buffalo does not.
Yes, I felt very bad for Buffalo. I was rooting for them very hard because I'm sick and tired of Patrick Mahomes complaining to the referees, and I just like to see someone different. I would have liked to see Lamar Jackson versus Josh Allen, but we don't get it. We'll see Mahomes in the AFC Championship game for, I think I heard, the 6th year in a row.
Yeah, 5th or 6th year in a row.
Which is unbelievable. As much as I don't like to see it, that's impressive. You got to give the Chiefs a lot of credit. Let's get into some playoff predictions here. We've got 4 games to predict. Let's start with the one that we've been talking about the most. Detroit at San Francisco. Kurt, realistically, I know there's a lot of Lions fans that are optimistic, but realistically, who do you think is going to win this one?
I think San Fran takes this one, probably by a small margin, but I still think they take it. I think if these teams played 10 times, I think San Fran wins like 7 out of those 10 times. The Lions still have a chance, but the Chiefs are not the Chiefs. I apologize. The Niners are just so complete, offense to defense. I mean, we're not going to be able to stop a combination of CMC, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle. I know Deebo Samuel might be injured, but who really cares when you have CMC, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle? Like I just said. So, what do you think? How are you feeling?
I kind of agree with your sentiment there. I think you're probably right. If they played 10 times, San Francisco would probably win 7. And I just think the 49ers have too many weapons. You kind of mentioned them. Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk. They have a lot. And the Lions have a lot too. You know, David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta. But I think the 49ers' weapons are far more experienced, far more poised for this type of a game compared to the Lions. You got Gibbs, who's a rookie, Laporta, who's a rookie, Amon-Ra St. Brown's a third-year player, something like that. David Montgomery's been around, but, I mean, Christian McCaffrey's been the best running back in football for a couple years now. Brandon Ayuk's been around. You have a lot of guys. Deebo Samuel's one of the top weapons in the league too. As much as I hate to say it, and I really don't think Brock Purdy's good enough to be a Super Bowl quarterback. I think he's going to be starting in the Super Bowl just, I don't know, 20 months after being drafted last in the NFL draft. It's pretty remarkable, but I think if you took any quarterback from that draft class and plugged him in, they'd probably be in the same spot. He got kind of lucky, in my opinion, getting thrown into such a good system. Let's move into the AFC, where Kansas City travels to Baltimore. This one's tough.
It is. It is tough to predict, but I think Baltimore wins this one pretty handedly. I know I called them frauds last week, but I don't think the Chiefs are nearly as good or complete as Baltimore. Kansas City's defense has looked shaky at times. Baltimore's has been just rock solid all year, and I think it'll continue to stay rock solid, especially against this Chiefs like wide receiver core, who has been, besides Rashee Rice, just very, very not good is the most friendly way I can put it. So I think Baltimore easily takes that one.
Easily.
Wow.
We talking like 2 touchdowns here?
I don't know about 2 touchdowns, but I will say definitely at least a touchdown.
Okay.
Is what I'd say.
Interesting. I agree. I said it earlier. I think Baltimore's going to win the Super Bowl. I think they'll beat the 49ers. I just think Baltimore's too good. I do think there's a lot of pressure, though, on Lamar Jackson. There's been a lot of talk about how he struggles in the playoffs, can't make it to the Super Bowl, can't win a Super Bowl. Mahomes has been here, like we just said, 5-6 times before. He's been to 3 Super Bowls already, and he's, 26, 27?
Yeah.
So the Chiefs are more experienced, but I just think Baltimore being at home, I think they need it more. I think they need this game more. Kansas City's coming off a Super Bowl win last year. I think it'd be nice if they won. They'd be happy, but I think this is a game Baltimore desperately, desperately needs to change a lot of the narrative around Lamar Jackson, around John Harbaugh, and the Ravens organization. Get them back to being the elite of the elite in the NFL. And we're going to see a rematch of the Super Bowl from 10, 11, 12 years ago, something, when it was Jim and John Harbaugh.
Ray Lewis.
Yep.
Man, I think that was the first Super Bowl I ever watched.
That was peak NFL. That was
the lights going out.
Yep. Very, very memorable moment. I want to get your take, though, on something, because I have noticed this, too. The Super Bowl color theory. You know, they release the Super Bowl logo each year, whenever at the start of the year, sometime well before.
Season. Yeah, sometime.
And why don't you explain a little bit of what this is here?
So the color theory is sort of a conspiracy, right? That whatever teams will play in the Super Bowl, that's what the color of the logo is for the Super Bowl. And the logo has only been like colored the past 2 seasons, because I think like there was those really cool OG like Super Bowl logos, and then we went to like just the trophy with the Roman numerals, but it was always silver. But the Roman numerals have been colored the past 2 seasons. In Super Bowl LVI, the colors were orange and yellow. The Bengals and the Rams played. Last season, in Super Bowl LVII, the colors were green and red, and the Eagles and the Chiefs played. In this year's Super Bowl, the colors are red and purple, which means the 49ers and the Ravens are likely, if this theory is true, will be the ones in the Super Bowl. And I went even a little deeper, because I noticed, the colors are not even, right? Every team who has less color in the Super Bowl logo has won.
Yeah.
And in this logo, there's more purple than red.
Uh-huh.
So maybe the 49ers beat the Ravens in the Super Bowl to prove the theory right 3 years in a row.
It is, yeah. And I'm seeing it here. Going back to Super Bowl 56, when the Rams beat the Bengals. You see it. The Bengals are on top, the Rams are on bottom, but there's significantly more orange in there than there is yellow, and the Rams won. Mm-hmm. And then last year, Eagles are on top, Chiefs on bottom, but there's significantly more blue, turquoisey, whatever green.
Eagles green, that's what it looks like to me, oddly enough. I don't know how to describe that color.
Yeah. There's more of that than there is Kansas City, and the Chiefs won. And like you mentioned, there's a lot more purple in this year's logo than there is red. So maybe that means Mr. Irrelevant Brock Purdy's going to get a Super Bowl ring in year 2, which that's just robbery, in my opinion. That's I can't even conceive that. I hope the Ravens win. Actually, I would like to see either the Ravens or the Lions win. 49ers, I was writing an article the other day for the Oakland Post. The Ravens have been to the Super Bowl 7 times, and 2 in the last 11 years. Lions have obviously never been. It's been a minute for the Ravens. I think the worst thing that we could see is a Niners Chiefs Super Bowl.
I'm not watching that.
I don't think many people want to watch that. I certainly don't. So it'll be interesting to see. Let's touch on a little bit of Major League Soccer really quick before we head over to the NBA.
Some exclusive breaking MLS news. Per sources, I'm the source, by the way. The MLS is interested in acquiring Anders Carlson, Chase McLaughlin, and Tyler Bass following their playoff losses.
Yeah, those three guys kind of sold a little bit there. Tyler Bass, especially at the end of that Bills game. Obviously, if he made the field goal, the game would have been tied, and Mahomes gets the ball back with a little less than 2 minutes to go. But yeah, that was some poor kicking.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Yep, that's right. So lots of good stuff from the NFL. We'll be back next week talking about the Super Bowl, which will, at that point would be 12 days away because there's a break in between. Hopefully, it'll be the Lions and Ravens, I think a lot of people are hoping for. So
hopefully,
we will see. About 2 hours after we finished our show last week, the Detroit Pistons secured their 4th win of the year over, as you have it written here, Kurt, the Washington Wolverines, which are actually obviously the Washington Wizards. You got Isaiah Livers was just traded there, Jordan Poole also there in Washington. But the Pistons won 129 to 118. Alec Burks, Jalen Duren, and Jaden Ivey were all very, very solid in the win. Burks scored 34 points and shot 11 of 17 from the field and 8 of 12 from 3. And Jalen Duren was looking like Andre Drummond out there. He had 20 points, 19 boards, just about 20-20, which Drummond did quite a bit when he was with Detroit. He didn't miss a shot from the field. And Jaden Ivey had 24 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists. He was 9 of 18 from the floor. So, arguably, the best game of the year for all three of those players. And the Pistons won by 11 against the Wizards, who are also one of the worst teams in the league. Kurt, is that encouraging that you had 3 guys step up in the absence of Cade Cunningham, or is it sad that you needed that kind of a performance from all 3 of those guys to get a win?
I think it's both, if we're being real. I mean, if we need Alec Burks, who was traded to our team as a salary dump, to score 34, we need Duren to have 20-20, and we need Ivy to be elite. It's sad. It's really sad, but I'm just glad that we have another win under our belt. I also want to say, Kyle Kuzma, don't ever think about talking smack about the Pistons ever again. Don't ever try to shush your home crowd ever again. Kyle Kuzma, the same guy who tweeted out, at this point, it's like, don't be that team when the Pistons were on their historic losing streak, lost to that team. And it feels real good. I've learned this year that I'm slowly becoming a Kyle Kuzma hater, so I don't care if he's a Michigan guy, but yes. No more smack talk for you, Kyle Kuzma.
Yeah, that was kind of one that backfired. Although when I first read the tweet, I will say I interpreted it as don't be the team that loses and ends the losing streak, if that makes sense, rather than just simply losing to the Pistons. But we'll take it as how you said. He lost to the team that he said not to lose to. So, like I said, the Wizards are also awful. They're 7-35.
Yeah, not good.
Yeah, not good, but they're still 3.5 games better than the Pistons in the standings. We'll get into that a little bit later. The Pistons also lost the rest of their matchups this past week, which surprises absolutely no one. They have, I don't think, other than maybe the first week of the year, they haven't won 2 games in a week all season.
Nope.
And it's hard to do that when you only have 4 wins, but they lost to the Timberwolves 124-117, and then they got swept by the Bucks in what was a home and home 141 to 135, and then once again 122 to 113.
I'm going to interject. What I think is super funny is the Bucks head coach, Adrian Griffin, just got fired today.
Did he really?
He did. This Bucks team is, I think, second in the East right now.
Yeah.
And I wonder if these two like very competitive games with the Pistons was like the tipping point of you're fired, because apparently a lot of the players just didn't really like him.
Wow.
And obviously the Bucks have played a lot like the Pacers this season, where it's all offense, no defense. But I mean, kind of weird to fire your head coach midway through the season when you're the second seed, especially in his first year.
Yeah.
But whatever. And
it's hard, too, to get fired, I think, when you have two of the best players in the NBA, and Giannis and Damian Lillard. That's very surprising. That's got to, ruin chemistry that you need down the stretch there in the final weeks of the regular season and going into the playoffs, where the Bucks will obviously be. But Ausar Thompson, we talked a lot about him last week not getting a whole lot of minutes, but he played better. It's not that he was playing bad.
No.
But he it seems like he got some more minutes, and he was more productive in the 3 games this week. He had 14, 7, and 22 points in the 3 games, which averages out to be just about 14, I think. So little more than that, 14 point something, but pretty solid from him.
Definitely. And he was also active on the block like he always is. I will say the game against the Bucks, he did have 0 points. He did drop a goose egg. But looking at the box score, he was the player with the highest plus and minus of any Pistons player. And he scored 0 points, which I think is pretty funny.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Which just goes to show his defensive impact, I guess, on the court. I think in 3 of these 4 games, Thompson played 20 or more minutes. In the game where he dropped 0, he played 18. So we're seeing an uprise in minutes, probably due to Isaiah Livers being gone. So I guess there's some positive in that. However, Marvin Bagley has been playing pretty good in Washington.
Isn't that funny?
Isn't it funny? His first game, he scored 20 points, had 11 rebounds and 3 blocks. In his second game for the Wizards, he had 21 and 12. And in his third game, he had 14 and 7. So maybe he's cooling off a little bit. But this trade is just terrible. We talked about this when it happened, and none of us liked it. And it's looking terrible already.
He joins the long list of guys, including, just off the top of my head, Chris Middleton, Spencer Dinwiddie, and you'd probably know a few others. Obviously, it's only been 3 or 4 games. The sample size is very small, but he never had, as far as I know, a 3-game stretch like that with Detroit.
No.
And here he is with his first 3 games with the Wizards, and he's averaging in the high teens. He's averaging almost a double-double.
Yeah.
And, you don't like to see that. So it's, yeah, we talked about it. You're giving away Marvin Bagley, who you acquired, giving away Isaiah Livers. We talked about how he really didn't do a whole lot for you. And then you're giving away draft picks, too, for 2 players who are just about, their contracts are almost up, right? They're up at the end of this year. So
2 guys who won't be on the team next year.
Yeah. And I did think that I saw Gallinari played pretty well in one of the games this past week, but like you said, not going to be on the team next year. So seems to be another loss for Troy Weaver as it relates to trades. So yeah, let's update a little bit on Josh Giddey. We talked about him. This has kind of been an ongoing story throughout the time that we've been doing this show since October. The police department was investigating Giddey in California. The department that was investigating him found no evidence against him. So he was playing as they were investigating, and now they've, I guess, officially found no evidence against him.
Nope. But the NBA is still conducting its own investigation on Giddey. And Giddey still, through all this time, has refused to comment to the media. And I don't know, just a weird situation. However, Chet Holmgren got his high school jersey retired this past week. Almost every player for the Thunder showed up, Brock. I want you to guess which player did not show up to Chet Holmgren's high school for his jersey retirement.
Could it be Josh Giddey?
Correct. It was Josh Giddey. Which just, I don't know, a little funny tidbit, I guess, in this whole story. Is Josh Giddey did not show up with all the, literally every single Thunder player. I think I counted there was 14 or 15 guys.
Wow.
So basically the entire roster's there. Josh Giddey, nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found.
It is very interesting. I saw the video of the Thunder players walking in. It's very cool that Holmgren got his jersey retired. It seems like just yesterday he was playing for Minnehaha. I don't know how you pronounce it.
I don't know how to pronounce it, but watching those Chet Holmgren basketball mixtapes, and now here he is.
Yeah.
Finally playing for OKC.
So moving into the rest of the NBA, Kurt, the Indiana Pacers made a trade with the Toronto Raptors, and it's one that you think benefits the Pacers very well. They received Pascal Siakam from the Raptors, and the Raptors received Bruce Brown, Jordan Nwora, Kira Lewis, and 3 first-round picks, and a second-round pick. And it was a 3-team deal along with the New Orleans Pelicans, who received cash considerations from Indiana. Your thoughts on this deal?
As far as NBA trades go, this was a pretty even deal. Pascal Siakam was on an expiring contract, so you can't ask for a lot. So you get Bruce Brown, you get some future draft picks, and obviously I think the Raptors are going to look to flip Bruce Brown probably around the trade deadline, just because Bruce Brown was already unhappy in Indiana. That man just needs to go back to Denver. I don't know why he didn't re-sign with Denver. Probably just wanted to get his bag. But as far as the Pacers go, like I just said during the break, there is not a single better player that fits what Indiana's doing and what their scheme is like other than Pascal Siakam. And now he's on your team. So this is a huge win for Indiana, huge win for Toronto. New Orleans gets off a small contract in Kira Lewis Jr., and they get some cash back. I think they had to give up that second-round pick. But overall, pretty fair, square trade.
It seems like it. It's going to have to play out, obviously, in the coming weeks and months, but certainly seems like Siakam's going to be a good addition for the Pacers, who I really like. They're 7th right now in the Eastern Conference standings. They would be in that play-in tournament spot right now, but they're tied with the Miami Heat right now in terms of games, and there are obviously still a lot of games left to go, but they're a team that I think could make some noise. Tyrese Halliburton, Siakam could be a good 1-2 punch, nice dynamic duo. There was also another trade in the NBA. Why don't you break this one down?
So earlier today, the Miami Heat made a deal with the Charlotte Hornets. Miami received Terry Rozier, who's been on a tear this season, and Charlotte received Kyle Lowry and a future first-round pick. For more context, Rozier is averaging a career high in points and assists this year. 23.2 points and 6.6 assists. Lowry has been I don't watch a lot of Heat basketball, but when I looked further into this trade, I think Kyle Lowry's shooting 20% from the field and 16% from 3 in his last 10 games.
Wow.
So it's not like Kyle Lowry is, a big name or he's really even that good anymore, but really big deal for Miami to acquire a guy at Rozier's talent level for a guy who's on his way out of the NBA. I mean, Lowry's, I think, 36 or 37 now. And it feels like if you're an old point guard and you get traded to the Hornets or you sign with the Hornets, your career is over. I think of Tony Parker. I mean, it's so weird to think Tony Parker was a Charlotte Hornet.
Yeah, but I don't even remember that.
Yeah. Weird tidbit of info for sure. So we'll see. I think Lowry's contract expires this year. I know Rozier's doesn't, so I don't know. Lowry could be out of the NBA, or he could, maybe be that locker room presence for some younger teams. But Rozier is going to be good in Miami. I'm just curious to see if they can still keep up with how good they are in defense if Rozier and Tyler Hero are your lead guards in the backcourt. But we'll see.
It'll be interesting. Let's move on to DeAndre Ayton. What you have written here is funny. I was trying not to laugh while you were talking about that last trade. DeAndre Ayton missed a matchup against, or he's playing for the Portland Trail Blazers.
Yeah.
So he missed his game for the Trail Blazers against the Brooklyn Nets due to icy roads in his neighborhood.
Yeah.
That's the most bizarre thing I've ever heard.
Can you imagine if DeAndre Ayton had classes at Oakland? Dude, that man wouldn't even be able to walk anywhere. But so the Blazers actually sent out like people, who work for the Blazers to help clear the ice so he could get to the game in time. But alas, it was no good, and Ayton just didn't play. Probably one of the weirdest things I've seen happen in the NBA, but it still deserved to be talked about because, I don't know, that's just so funny to me.
That sounds like a dude who doesn't like playing basketball.
No, he took a snow day, bro.
Yeah, just day off. I don't feel like going to work today. I'm just gonna say that the roads are icy, which maybe they were in Portland. I can't imagine it's any worse than it is here in Michigan, but that's definitely pretty bizarre.
Yeah.
And speaking of goofy NBA players, let's talk a little bit about Carmelo Anthony, who obviously is now retired. He doesn't play anymore, but he's been in the NBA news for a couple months now, and he's not even playing.
No, he isn't. Carmelo Anthony I think he just likes to say stupid stuff to stay relevant. First, I think earlier this month, he said he wasn't happy about Nikola Jokic wearing number 15 for the Nuggets. Obviously, Carmelo Anthony wore 15 during his time in Denver, and he believes that the Nuggets purposely gave Jokic the number to ruin Carmelo Anthony's wonderful, full of rainbows legacy that was his tenure in Denver. So, lot to unpack here, but Carmelo Anthony's number was never going to get retired in Denver. That's my first point, right? But this guy, Carmelo Anthony, was so unhappy in Denver that he forced his way off the team. So I don't know what legacy he's really talking about in Denver. He didn't leave a good one. But also, the last point, Nikola Jokic, this guy's a second-round pick, was drafted during a Taco Bell commercial, dude. Did the Denver Nuggets, did anyone in the NBA ever think Nikola Jokic was going to be this good? No. Just straight up no. So, I don't know. Carmelo Anthony, up to some weird stuff for sure. Next, he also called Toronto Raptors forward RJ Barrett a bland player. While that is true, I do think RJ Barrett is a pretty bland player. So was Carmelo, if we're being honest. I mean, you can say all you want about Carmelo and his scoring ability, but that's all he really did. If Carmelo was drafted in 2023, he would be like Amoni Bates, just a G Leaguer. Is that an out-of-pocket statement? Sure, but I don't really care. Carmelo Anthony only ever effectively scored. He never effectively did anything else that was good. So,
isn't he a Hall of Famer?
Knowing how the NBA Hall of Fame works, probably.
I feel like
it's the easiest Hall of Fame to get into.
I think you're right. It has gotten a lot less prestigious, I think. But yeah, I mean, I think if you're a Hall of Famer, you kind of have the right to say that about current players, somewhat. But I don't know. It looks like he's going to be enshrined in the New York City Basketball Hall of Fame's class of 2024. I guess maybe he didn't retire that long ago.
No, he didn't. I think he hopped teams like like a frog his last couple of years. You just never knew what team he was on. It might have been the Lakers. It might have been the Trailblazers. I'm pretty confident it's one of those two teams he last played on. But, yeah, Carmelo's not in the league. And
that's interesting. I guess I thought he had been retired for longer, but I'm reading a lot of people saying that once he's eligible, which I think is 5 years after you retire.
Yeah.
I know it's that way in the NFL. They're saying once he retires, or once he's eligible, he will be a first ballot Hall of Famer. So, like you said, obviously a really good scorer, but hard to argue that he wasn't bland himself, like he said about RJ Barrett. We're running up on time here. We got just a few more seconds and minutes left. The Pistons have 3 more games this week. They'll take on the Charlotte Hornets on Wednesday, January 24th. The Hornets are right down there near the bottom of the Eastern Conference standings with Detroit. Then they'll take on the Washington Wolverines. Like we joked about earlier, on Saturday, also down there, second worst in the Eastern Conference. The Hornets are third worst. And then they'll take on the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are second in the West. Kurt, probably not the Thunder. That game will happen on Sunday. They're probably not going to win that. But do you think the Pistons could win either of the first two against the Hornets or Washington?
I'm hoping so. I think we'll win at least one of these, which is something I've not said on the show probably since October. So, yes, I think we can pull away with a win against either the Hornets or the Wolverines. What do you think, Brock? Any wins?
You know what? I'll say yes, because they have 4 right now, and in order to get to my prediction of 9, I think they're going to have to get another one here soon, and they got to win one of these games against these bad teams. And, you know, just looking at the rest of the schedule, they do end the year with San Antonio. That could be a win, but I guess there are still a lot of games left. They're just over halfway. They just crossed that mark recently. They're 4-39, so 1 game past the halfway mark. They're 4 wins. They have 4 wins, so they're on pace for 8. I'm going to need them to do 1 game better than they did in the first half. So I'll say, yeah, they beat one of the two.
One of the two.
Charlotte or Washington. I can't make a prediction. We got to run. Thank you all so much for joining us on the Blue Ski Mask Show. We will be back next week, hopefully recapping a Lions win over the 49ers and an appearance in the Super Bowl. We'll see you all next week.